Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. I wanted to talk a little bit about the current goings on in the world of professional wrestling today. Um, it was announced on the internet and by Brian Alvarez of Wrestling Observer Radio that Vince McMahon and Bruce Prichard are now taking over the new revamped NXT. And this news came as no immediate shock to me because also backstage last night was rumors that Vince McMahon is irate about the ratings of Monday Night Raw. So apparently he thinks taking over NXT, the only good thing that WWE really had going for it in the last 5 or 6 years, was a good thing. But now he and Bruce Prichard, with their antiquated ideas about professional wrestling, and booking and talent recruitment and everything and their whole wrestling philosophy, the whole sports entertainment philosophy are now going to be the main ones booking for NXT, the third brand of the WWE, the popular brand, the one that the internet really loved, the one that hardcore wrestling fans that was supposed to be for us, the hardcore fans, the hardcore dedicated fans that have been with WWE for years. It was supposed to be something different, an alternative to what we were seeing on the main rosters of Raw and SmackDown. A lot of fans, including myself, started to tune in heavily and started to really go to events like NXT TakeOver Brooklyn in 2015 when I saw Sasha Banks and Bailey in the Iron Woman match because NXT was something different, because it was an alternative, and because it appealed to the hardcore wrestling fan. Sure, other brands had appealed to the hardcore wrestling fan before, like ECW, like Ring of Honor, and now like AEW. But never before had WWE ever successfully appealed to a hardcore wrestling fan base. Even during the Attitude Era, the people that it was really appealing to was mainly the casual viewer, the casual fans or the new fans that really liked, storyline over substance. NXT was the first time ever that in-ring product and the stuff that appeals to hardcore wrestling fans ever appeared on WWE programming, at least since I've been watching it in the early 90s. What NXT basically was WWE's answer to Indie Mania that had struck the wrestling business after they basically took it all over in 2001. There was no other alternative. There was TNA, sure, and there was Ring of Honor. But when Ring of Honor would come to every city during WrestleMania weekends, the different WrestleMania weekends, they would blow whatever WWE was doing out of the water. So WWE and Triple H decided that they would create a third brand of wrestling that appealed to the hardcore wrestling fan or the traditional wrestling fan that had probably fallen away from professional wrestling after WCW and ECW had closed. The booking philosophy in NXT was more similar to the NWA, the studio shows that would air in the mid to late 80s in WCW before Hulk Hogan took it over in 1994. Like the stuff you would see in Jim Crockett Promotions, like in the 80s and early 90s, WCW was what basically NXT really was. And now NXT is no more because Vince McMahon is taking it over. Vince McMahon and Bruce Prichard. This is like this is like um this is like somebody who is a Catholic priest taking over a Jewish synagogue. Like the booking philosophies of Vince McMahon and Bruce Prichard are diametrically opposed to what NXT was founded on. Sure, NXT was originally some stupid reality show, and it resulted in a failed Nexus angle. But after that, it was one of the things that, especially in 2015, that really helped launch the Divas Revolution and change the landscape of professional wrestling, especially for the female talent. And it helped launch the careers of Seth Rollins, Big E, and others. You know, that really got over with the fans. And when you were into a character on NXT, it felt like you were part of something special, that you were part of something intimate. It was the closest thing post the 1990s that we ever got to feeling like we were part of ECW. Sure, other fans like hardcore fans on the East Coast had Ring of Honor and hardcore fans on the West Coast had PWG, but those things were dedicated to a fan base that were tape traders or DVD traders in the 2000s. They never really aired on either television or the WWE network. NXT was one of those things that honestly, if again, it felt like a love letter to the hardcore fans. It was like a thank you. It was like an appreciation. It was something that we all could cherish and love. That was different than what we were seeing on the main roster. Now, WWE, well, it started in 2019, in my opinion. When they put NXT on the USA Network, I'm like, well, now they got to appeal to the network affiliates. They got to appeal to the sponsors. They're going to basically turn it into another SmackDown and Raw. And that's what it became. It was in the Wednesday Night Wars with AEW for all of 2019, and then it was moved because of hockey or some shit like that to a Thursday. And now it's just like, okay, now the Vince McMahon's taking it over. He's changed the logo, the black and gold logo that was really cool, that really looked like something different, was now been taken over by this colorful rainbow logo. And I'm like, what the hell? And then like, I don't know, you know, Bruce Prichard. I mean, listen, I met Bruce in person in 2017 before he went back to the WWE, and he seemed like a pretty nice guy. And I love the Brother Love character back in the 80s, because it was just out there and it was just something different, and it was really poking fun of popular televangelists that would come on TV, and that was the base of it. And I would love to repeat in his mock southern accent, I love ye. But let's face it, and his podcast was, of course, revolutionary. Other wrestling podcasts that followed in his footsteps, including the ones that had Conrad Thompson as the host, were basically the same thing. He had set the tone for what the newer school podcast, after he made the podcast in 2016, what podcast would be more retrospective than just with the guest all the time, like Jim Ross would have or Eric Bischoff would have originally. Like they would have different guests on, and the guests would come and they would interview the guests. But he and Conrad took the chance and they did something different, and they revolutionized the podcast game. But if we're being totally honest and candid, Bruce Prichard's booking style in the mid 90s in the WWF, him and the late Pat Patterson, wasn't that great. In fact, it was really shitty. Like when he was booking in the WWF, when he was writing for the WWF, that's when it was at its lowest point ever, 1994, 1995, early 1996 before Russo took over. Like, and then when he came back and he started writing again from 2019 onward, his work hadn't improved. Like, I mean, Bruce is he's not a good booker. So if he's going to be the one to take over NXT, him and Vince McMahon, that's terrible. Like, that is antithetical to what NXT represents. NXT was supposed to be punk rock. NXT was supposed to be against the mainstream. NXT was supposed to be different. And why I say that the title says Vince McMahon ruined everything, because that's what I truly believe. I truly believe that um that as opposed to the conventional theory that Vince McMahon has a Midas touch and that everything he touched turns to gold, I feel like from a wrestling point of view and from a wrestling perspective, everything Vince McMahon has touched, especially as of late, and I would say after 2001, has been complete shit. Because when he's involved and when he puts his creative spin on it, it becomes sports entertainment. And I think that although casuals don't recognize it and people outside of wrestling don't really recognize it, we know as hardcore wrestling fans that have been following the product for many years that there's a marked difference between sports entertainment and professional wrestling. And I would say what is the difference to explain it to the non-fans and to the novice and to the casuals? I would say that the difference is that professional wrestling focuses on the professional wrestling matches rather than the characters, angles, and storylines, where sports entertainment focuses more on the angles, storylines, and characters. Now, you could say, well, in a world where MMA exists, in a world where legitimate combat exhibitions exist, like Jake Paul's Triller, what's the point of having, quote unquote fake or quote unquote work professional wrestling matches? Well, I believe personally as a wrestling fan that there is something completely different. There is a complete different alternative that professional wrestling and the professional wrestling exhibitions offer you that other combat sports and other endeavors really don't. And that is the quality of the exhibitions. Like you could have a 30-minute Iron Man match like Sasha and Bailey, have it go back and forth and orchestrate the action in such a way that it looks highly competitive in ways that you cannot have for an MMA match, an MMA or boxing match that may be unevenly matched. The guy gets or the guy or the female gets knocked out within 5 or 10 minutes. Or you can't have it with sports entertainment because think about it. With Vince McMahon and Bruce Prichard and other sports entertainment advocates, you would just have interviews and you would just have stuff like you have on Raw. No matches, no great matches. When was the last time you saw a great match on Monday Night Raw or Friday Night SmackDown? Never. Well, not that many years. So now the the same thing that plagued Raw and SmackDown will now plague uh, NXT. It's kind of like when political movements start out online. They start out online, they start out fringe, they start out as part of the rebellion, and then one of the two mainstream political parties and one of the two mainstream political philosophies picks up on it and they become part of it and they ruin it all. It's like, no, we didn't want you at the party. Or like when you were a kid and a new social media site comes on and you feel free to express yourself, and then all of a sudden your mom or dad starts to join that that site. No, the thing that made it cool and the thing that made it edgy was that it was for us. It was our place. It was our exclusive domain. It was our special place. It was our sanctuary. It was where we went to get away from the mainstream. It was supposed to be anti-mainstream. And Vince being in this case like the government, coming in and taking it over and co-opting it and appropriating it to his likes and feelings and dislikes or whatever, is encroaching on our territory as hardcore fans. It's taking over our temple. It's co-opting our temple. We don't want it to be mainstream. We don't want it to be the same. We don't want it to be like Raw and SmackDown, because that's why we liked it, because it was different. Anyway, I'll miss the days when NXT was a cutting edge product, when it was something different, when it had a special and intimate feel. I won't be watching it from this point on, because I'm gonna feel like, what's the difference between watching that and watching Raw and SmackDown? Peace. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell button to see when my next video is coming out. Love you guys.